Hello from Bratislava, the capital of Slovakia. In this video, we are going to explore together some of the most interesting medieval sites in Slovakia. We will follow along the TRANSROMANICA route and we'll visit some of the Romanesque churches along it. Well, join me. TRANSROMANICA is the cultural route of the Council of Europe, spanning through 9 countries and including more than 50 sites. Last month, I visited one of its member countries, Slovakia, and explored some beautiful medieval sites there. People were traveling throughout the centuries, and one of the first travelers were pilgrims. They were embarking on journeys over Europe on a quest to visit some of the sacred medieval sites. The TRANSROMANICA route highlights those unique places and inspires travelers to visit some of them. I started my search for the TRANSROMANICA sites in Slovakia at BINA. It's a small village located some 20 minutes away from Esztergom and the border with Hungary. In that southern part of Slovakia, majority of people speaks Hungarian, and the region was, like the rest of the country, a part of the Hungarian kingdom during the Middle Ages, when those TRANSROMANICA sites in Slovakia were built. Although a small village today, BINA was quite an important place during the Middle Ages. Back in the 13th century, the noble family Hont Pazmani founded a monastery there. The Church of the Assumption of the Virgin Mary and the small rotunda dedicated to the 12 apostles are everything left from it. My guide there was Anna Tucharska from the Monuments Board of Slovakia, who showed me all the smallest details on those buildings. Anna, can you please tell me a bit more about this church?
Yes, actually we are standing at one of the most ancient historic sites in this region. Its roots go into the 9th century, when this was a fortified settlement of the Great Moravian Empire, and the Church of the Assumption of the Holy Mary, which you can see, derives from this Great Moravian heritage. It was built at the beginning of the existence of the Hungarian kingdom in the first third of the 12th century. It was built by Count Omodej. It was a member of one of the most prominent noble families in medieval Hungary. Their family name was Hunt Poznan. The legend has it that Omodej built it as a sign of gratitude for the safe return of the Hungarian king from the crusade. The church is actually standing very close to the former capital of Hungary, Esztergom. And Hunt Poznan family had close ties with Esztergom nobility and the seat of the archbishop, and they invited master workers, master builders who built Esztergom Cathedral to build their church of the Assumption of the Virgin Mary, and also the adjacent monastery of the Premonstratensis order.
Although glorious and beautiful from the outside, these 2 buildings are home to some real medieval treasures. Inside the church, some fantastic medieval stone capitals and decoration is located. The most interesting are the Atlant, or a praying man with raised hands, capitals with birds and hunting scenes. The rotunda was painted during the Middle Ages. Some rare Romanesque wall paintings, probably depicting 12 apostles, could still be found there. Can you please tell me a bit more about this building behind us?
Sure. Just opposite the church, you can see the rotunda of the 12 apostles. Rotundas are one of the very specific and characteristic type of Romanesque buildings in Slovakia. It was built roughly about the same time as the church, in 1217 or 1220. And it is still not quite clear what purpose it served, what was its function. It is believed that it served as a baptisterium for the monastery.
My search for the TRANSROMANICA sites in Slovakia took me to diaco cenext. We were still in southern Slovakia and drove mostly through the flatland and massive fields. It was pretty windy the next day, and I learned it's something pretty common in that part of the country. The Church of the Assumption of the Virgin Mary is a monumental Romanesque building rebuilt later in history. A small chapel inside of it is the oldest part of the church. Although the wall paintings were created much later, in the second half of the 19th century, they gave it a certain historical feel. Its original medieval architecture could be seen in a part of the sanctuary. However, its most fascinating part is about the church, where the remains of an old Benedictine monastery is. It was used by the traveling monks who would come there to monitor the fieldwork. Seeing the small cells in which they slept or the niches where they would sit to pray made this place come to life. My next stop was Spiriska Capitola, home to the marvelous St. Martin's Cathedral. While approaching it, I could spot the cathedral towers and the Spish Castle located on a neighboring hill from kilometers away. That gave me a sense of how must have felt arriving at it back in the Middle Ages. Seeing the cathedral towers proudly standing between the hills made them look even more heavenly to those early travelers. I arrived at Spiriska Capitola in the dusk, just in time to enjoy a beautiful sunset from it. Spiriska Capitola is a historic town that belonged to the church back in the day. Surrounded by solid walls, even today, you enter the place through one of its city gates. Besides the cathedral, it's also home to the bishop's palace, canonical houses, and other institutions. I'm in front of the St. Martin Cathedral at Spiriska Capitola, definitely one of the most beautiful places on the TRANSROMANICA route in Slovakia. I met the city archivist Monika Bizonyova in front of the St. Martin's Cathedral. It was absolutely my favorite of all the TRANSROMANICA sites in Slovakia. Stepping into that old church immediately transferred me back to the Middle Ages. From its numerous beautiful altars, stained glass windows, to the Romanesque decoration on its capitals, St. Martin's Cathedral is the medieval art treasure.
And under this column, we found the skeleton of one woman, and she had coins which were from the end of the 12th century. So maybe at that time there was a beginning of building.
So there are 8 altars in the cathedral. Can you tell me what's the significance of the main altar behind us?
Behind us is an altar which is from 1478. It's the main altar, the biggest altar in this church, and it's winging, which means it can be opened and closed. Now these wings are opened and they are closed in time of fast, so 40 days before Easter. And on this altar we can see in the middle there is a Mary Virgin with small Jesus. On her left side there is St. Martin, patron of this church and all Spish bishopric, and on the right side there is St. Nicholas. And then on these wings we can see many persons, many saints, many martyrs. In upper parts there are men, kings and one bishop, and in lower parts there are women martyrs.
An old cathedral's library and the archive were probably 2 of my favorite places. They are witnessing about the churches not only serving as religious places throughout history, even more importantly, they were the treasures of knowledge and culture. We are at the old cathedral's archive, and I was wondering, Monica, if you can tell us what are these bags behind us?
So we are in archive of Locus Credibilis, which was a very important place for people in the surroundings in Hungary kingdom in Middle Ages. And these bags were bags for documents. In these bags, these documents, very old from Middle Ages, was preserved. And it was like something against the mouses, because these documents were from pergamon, which was very yummy for mouses, and for this reason they were packed in these bags.
It was these kind of stories and places on the TRANSROMANICA route that made them so magical. Imagining people building those churches, treasuring important books and documents at its archives, or building the walls around them to protect them from invaders, suddenly made these buildings much more than the pieces of architecture. They became the cultural spots, places where art and heritage weren't only cherished, but also created.